I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest, and I'll ask any member if they have one of those to declare. Councillor Smith.
I'd like to declare pecuniary interest regarding, sorry, Linda, if you could scroll down, I believe it's 5.9? 9.5? Let's try again. 9.5, better. As my husband is part owner of the Social Athletics of Saugeen Shores.
Thank you. Further disclosures? I don't see any. Of course, you can declare one at a time if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. We have no public meetings. That moves on to adoption of the minutes. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Schreider, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that Council adopt the minutes of the Council meeting of January 13, 2020 as presented. Questions or comments to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. And then item 2, the Committee of the Whole minutes of January 13th, 2020. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor, that Council note and file the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of January 13, 2020 as presented. Questions or comments to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves then on to a report of the Committee of the Whole, a general government report on the long-term financial plan. And I have a motion moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Smith, that the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the general government report dated January 13, 2020, recommending that Council endorse the long-range financial plan. Questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. We have no reports of municipal officers. We have no notices. So that moves on to bylaws. There are 5 bylaws. Does any member wish to remove one bylaw for individual consideration? Councillor Carr.
Yes, and thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like just to call out 9-5 bylaw 11-2020 to talk about.
Okay. Any others? All right. So what I will do is we'll read all of the other ones, and then we'll read that one, okay? So it's been moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider, that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 10th day of February 2020. 1/7/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a Bruce County and Grey County Community Wellbeing Plan Advisory Committee. 2/8/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an agreement with the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce. 3/9/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of a subdivision agreement with Red Hawk Construction Company Limited for the development of Phase 3 of the Westlink subdivision, and 4/10/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an agreement with the Blue Water District School Board. Questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Just a second. So then I have a motion. Councillor Smith. I have a motion moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider, that the following bylaw is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 10th day of February 2020. 5/11/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of a lease agreement with 2706913 Ontario Incorporated. Questions or comments to the resolution? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, first of all, I would like to ask for a recorded vote on this one when we go to vote. And then also, too, I still have many issues which I did have addressed, and I thank David for his response to my email and my questions that I had sent through to him on it there. I've seen the new rendering, and I was on, like I had said before, I wasn't on board with this thing at all at the starting. The proponents have done a very good job, and I'd like to thank them for going through everything that they have done as well. I know this hasn't been an easy road for anybody with it. My biggest complaint with this lease so far is under the non-competition agreement. For that reason, under that one, I will not be supporting this one tonight. My main issue with that one, sorry if you just give me a second, I just got to find it again. Yeah, the Schedule C was the one, so under Schedule C. So under the non-competition agreement, I totally understand that we would not want to be setting up a second banquet hall, convention center, whatever we're going to call it, as well as a restaurant right beside one that we're looking at doing. I understand that side of it. Where I have my issue is in the last paragraph there, the leasee will make reasonable efforts to cooperate with any future charitable and non-profit events proposed for the geographical area provided within this section, which they are talking about everything south of Elgin Street and north of Izzard Street. I just myself, I just want to make sure I'm record for saying that I do not support that for that reason, that I don't feel that the proponent should have any say over any kind of charitable or nonprofit events that want to be using our beach. I know we're talking two different things. If we're talking the beach or the parking lot to anything, I just didn't feel that I'm just not comfortable with that for that reason. I just wanted to make sure it was on record for that. Thank you.
Okay, further comments to the resolution? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we're not making a final decision on design and layout and so on and so forth for the development this evening, but I just did want to make a comment, and I'll probably make another comment in a few months from now. This is probably one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my term of council and in many years as Director of Community Services dating back, but from a political standpoint, I've labored over this one, and I've had a tough time with it. I've had some sleepless nights over this one, actually, and I do take these things maybe a little too personal sometimes, but this is a life changer. It's a game changer for our community, and it's been hard. I did have a couple of questions. And I don't know whether it's the appropriate time for it or not. If it's not, you can call me out of order, Mr. Mayor. That's fine too. But there's been a lot of talk in the community about a discussion group being held around the look and feel, the final look for the development and the charrette. And I don't know whether it's the right time to talk about that or now. But I mean, we're voting on approval of the lease agreement tonight, which is a significant step. And I'd just like to know. I asked the developer this question a short time ago, actually after the last meeting, about whether or not he'd be calling a group of people together to talk about, the final look and feel for the development. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, I think it's a fair question before we vote on such a significant agreement. Will there be a get-together between the ownership group and members of our community to talk about what this development will look and feel like once the final look is presented?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the proponents are required to bring a final design for final town approval. What steps that they take to get to that are completely within their purview, and it's something that they need to decide on. To date, the proponents have made adjustments based on feedback received from a number of people, some supporting the proposal and some not so supportive. But the proponents have demonstrated a willingness to listen. I expect that they will continue to seek input and feedback before they make a final design submission to the town. I believe that they want to make it as the proposal as good as it possibly can be.
And Mr. Mayor, I think that's a good thing that there's movement there to speak to members of our community about the final look and feel of this development. There's only two ways to vote. It's either yes or no, I'm going to support a lease agreement, or no, I'm going to turn this down, and the potential for development down there will be done. And if there's not enough votes, so there's only two ways to go on this. And the people in the community that have shown some opposition to components, not all, to some components of the development, they've done a lot of work here. And they've put a lot of time and effort. I don't particularly like some of the unfriendliness that's gone on with this whole thing, but hopefully the community will heal. I said this is the last meeting, and but this has been a hard one, and so I will be supporting this, but it's been a tough decision.
I think just to add to what the CAO said, it's important always to remember that when it comes to the final aesthetic design of this development, there's a lot of control for the municipality built into this lease. Ultimately, that will come back, and council will, again, as always, decide what to do with whatever's presented to us. And you'll have those options. You can choose any number of courses with that. So I think you should have confidence that there's more decision points to come, many more decision points to come, some here, some made by the administration. Some of them are regulatory issues that we'll need to deal with some of our regulatory agencies. But, there's a lot of, as with any major development, a lot of ducks to get in a row, and some of those will come back to this table for your input and direction. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a couple of questions that I've seen in emails over the last couple of weeks, I guess. One is a question that I would ask our CAO if you could explain the process that the town, the municipality used to determine what the appropriate level of rent would be. I think that would be helpful for people to hear that either again or maybe for the first.
I'm happy to do that. First of all, I'll state that the lease rate is fair and appropriate. The town has hired a professional, neutral real estate appraiser who carried out an extensive review of the property and determined the lease rate that we had come up with is fair and appropriate. Although we used different methods to calculate, we both came to the same conclusion. The closest comparator for the is the former train mini putt property. When you look at the size of space and use, using the overall square footage, they were paying about 10 cents a square foot, and they had exclusive use of that space. You could fence it off, and if staff used that same methodology, the proponents would be paying about $7,000 rent, and that didn't feel appropriate. So staff looked at another method, which is taking into consideration the built form, the square footage built form, recognizing again that the former tenants of the train station property had much more space than just the built form. When we looked at that, built form costs, they varied with the different tenants on the waterfront. They varied between $1.30 and $3.50. Again, when we looked at scale and scope, we felt that the $2.50 would be appropriate based on the built form only. That maximized the revenue coming into the town. In fact, I haven't heard comments saying that the revenue isn't appropriate. It is about 17 times higher than what the former tenants were paying. And that's the methodology that we use based on our expertise. Again, the external land appraiser used different methodology. He looked at real estate markets. He looked at a value of the property if we were going to sell it, and went through completely independent, and his rate came up to within $200 of what we had proposed. So it was a good validation that although we used a different method, we came to the same spot, and that's why I led with, and I'll end with the lease rate is fair and it's appropriate.
Thank you. I also had a question after the December 16th meeting and then our last meeting where we discussed the lease about the issue of accessible parking in front of the Harbor Light restaurant. And I wonder, it's my understanding that there have been some adjustments made in that regard, and I wonder if you could explain that.
Sure. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned earlier, their proponents have been receptive to comments. They do listen where they can. You know, some comments are not things that they consider for a variety of reasons. One that we heard was accessible parking, both for the Harbor Light and also for the harbor for drop-off. You know, you've got a boat, you want to drop your stuff off, loading and unloading. The most recent site plan has addressed both of those areas, and as they continue to refine their proposal for the final town approval, I think they'll consider to listen. And I think what you'll see when they bring it is they have been responsive when they're able for reasonable concerns that don't negatively put them out of business, quite frankly. So that the accessible parking, I feel, has been addressed in the version that I've seen, as well as harbor pick-up and drop-off parking.
Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to the CAO. A provision of the lease is that we will provide an unencumbered area for them to build this Cedar Crescent Village. So by approving this lease, does that give the town then the go-ahead to finally start to clean up that what has turned into a bit of a blight on the harbor and on the beach area, that the old building and the rusty drums and the old infrastructure that was there and the old mini putt and all that? Does that give us the green light to start to work on that? Because the sooner that goes, I think the start of the recovery of the area will begin.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we've been purposely not taking that property down, although we will. And the reason why is because there are some services that come in through there. We wanted to make sure with the final design that we weren't disadvantaging servicing coming in. So when the final design is prepared and the servicing plan where hydro's coming in, where drainage comes in, we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking out anything that may need to be reinstalled. But to your point, the current situation is not positive in terms of how the building looks. And as soon as we're able, staff will start to clean that up. And when the servicing plan is done, we'll remove that former building.
Do we have some confidence that it'll be before the next tourist season?
Work will start. I believe the proponents are working towards a summer 2021 grand opening, and their initial project plan supports that. That is something that will come back for council or to council for town approval. Whether council's involved in that will be determined.
No, I understand that the CCV is some a year or so out. I mean, just getting rid of the blight there, the old drums and the barbed wire fence and all that.
Absolutely. It's just probably 6-8 weeks away.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Just a couple of follow-up things, Mr. Mayor, and a question, CAO. There's been of some concern over time since this was first brought about the Cedar Crescent Village about the Lookout Tower. And is it fair to say, and I know that'll be happening during the site plan control, but is the Lookout Tower actually been removed from this proposal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm reluctant to speak on behalf of the proponent because iterations change, and we know that members of the public will take something and sometimes use it out of context. And the most recent version that I've seen, there has been adjustment to the tower. It's more incorporated into the building. However, I don't want anyone, so again, I am reluctant because anything I say here gets I'll end there.
I think it's important to be clear that no decision has been made on those points. Those decisions will come back to council, and then and only then will there be anything final about the aesthetics of this development. So the work continues diligently behind the scenes, I'm sure, and it will come before us when it's ready. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
And you said that well earlier, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the comment. I did raise some concerns about the drop-off areas for those with disabilities, for Harbour Lake Restaurant, and for Sunday evening concerts. And thank you, Councillor Grace, for raising that. And I think that's a positive thing that's happening. So thank you.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for the CAO again, going back to Councillor Mayat's question about the preparation of the site. Could you estimate the approximate cost to the municipality of that service? And then it's my understanding from the lease that, if you could confirm this, that the proponent will pay for all servicing costs?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, two questions there. The first one is we have an estimate of about $15,000 to raise the current site, raise it with a Z, I think it's spelled with, the current buildings, and prepare the site without bringing anything in, just leveling the site, make it reasonably flat, and that's what we're estimating the cost. We do have a quote on that, so it will be fairly close to that. The agreement also calls for the proponent to be responsible for all servicing costs, so bringing in electricity, bringing in whatever services that they are required to operate their business. We also know that we have a responsibility for areas on the waterfront outside of their development. So we do know that we currently have drainage issues. We currently have money in our long-range budget to accommodate that. So there may be some cost sharing if they need a pipe that is I'm going to use old. If we need an 8-inch pipe and they need it to be a 12-inch pipe, then there may be some cost sharing. It wouldn't be fully borne on them, but any cost that is tied directly to their site will be theirs fully.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments before we call the vote? I don't see any. It's a recorded vote, so we'll turn it over to the clerk.
Call out the names in alphabetical order of their last names. If you're in support of the motion, please say yes. If you're opposed, please say no. Mayor Charbonneau?
Yes.
Councillor Carr?
No.
Councillor Grace?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt?
Yes.
Councillor Myatt?
Yes.
Councillor Rich?
Yes.
Councillor Schreider?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring back Councillor Smith. So there is a resolution here to go into closed session, but my own assessment is that closed session may not be necessary. I wonder, is there consensus from council that that's not required? By consensus, we will dispense with the close to public session. So that moves us then on to the confirmatory bylaw. I have a motion moved by Councillor Myatt, seconded by Councillor Grace, that bylaw 12/2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 10th day of February 2020. All in favor? That's carried. And finally, I have a motion moved by Councillor Rich, second by Councillor Carr, that this regular council meeting of February 10, 2020 hereby adjourns at 8:04 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you all very much, and have a good night.